Howdy, everyone. This is Jeff Megow again with tenantimprovement.com, the lease and build podcast. I want to thank you guys for following and subscribing and liking on all that other stuff I'm supposed to ask you to do in advance. The lease and build podcast is a podcast focused on tenant improvement and capital improvement projects. So if you are a commercial leasing broker or a property manager, if you're a business owner or business manager and you're about to embark on a construction related project in and around your office and where you do your work, this podcast is looking to serve you. On tenantimprovement.com, the website, you have access to all our past and future episodes. For the podcast, you also have a directory of all types of trades that in and around the tenant improvement process, as well as a portfolio of example projects. And so it's just a resource platform tied into this podcast that we're looking to provide content to y'all so that you can get on to the next phase and execute the next vision of your business as you sign this new lease and move forward with your company. Today, I am joined by a friend of mine, Mr. James Healy. James and I met several years ago in a business networking group, and James has been a construction consultant for quite some time, which is different than being a general contractor. There's a huge difference, which is why we have James here today, and we have a separate category as construction consulting, because if you are running a high-powered law firm and you're doing 2 or 3 floor build-out, there's a lot of things that are important to the construction process, but it might not be what you do on a day-to-day basis. And having somebody who's truly on your side kind of navigating that, I think, is a huge benefit. And so we wanted to have James excuse me, here today to kind of explain what that role is, tell us about himself, and hopefully we can all learn something. James, you're my hero for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Appreciate the invite.
So, all right, we're going to talk a little bit personal. I like to give an idea of who James is. I know you're from Houston. You've got some construction experience. One thing James and I share is a passion for soccer. I know he played, you said rugby at some point?
Yeah, back in the college days.
In the college days. You don't have the cauliflower ears, so that's...
Yeah, I know. I got out early.
You got out early. Yeah. But then you were playing soccer recently. Like, how recent?
Up until about a year and a half ago.
A year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And knee surgery, but what kind of knee surgery?
Replacement.
Replacement.
Yeah.
And then you were still cleared by the doctor to go back.
Yeah, but I spend my time carrying grandkids now.
So. There are important goals.
Yeah.
And then there are other goals and stuff. That's funny. I miss the game almost daily as I watch my son play sports, but hanging up the boots is understandable. So tell me about, in construction, native Houstonian, tell me what part of town did you grow up and how'd you get into construction and how long you been in it?
I grew up on the west side of town, went to Stratford High School.
Okay.
Out there. I've been in construction a little over 35 years, I guess now. And I've done everything from residential work to commercial, retail, public, industrial.
Okay.
Covered just about all of it.
Okay.
Over the years.
And so inside construction firms also, or how did you land into the construction consulting role?
Well, after being a GC for so many years, and a lot of times I was working on banks and large retail trades or chains, and they all had in-house consultants or in-house staff that know the construction industry. And actually it makes it a lot easier to work with them because those people know, they built a lot of things and they know the ins and outs of the trades. But there's a large number of, companies and that only builds 1 or 2 things over the course of their lifetime, or, every 5 years. And so there's a sort of a niche there where Healy Consulting provides expertise when they need it. For that one time, year-long project or 6-month project where construction's not their main source of income in business, but they just need their facility built.
Yeah,
and I help them do it.
Okay, so that kind of painted a good picture for me. So in the early days, working with the GC, but working with developers who had repeat projects, and they do have in-house, those customers have in-house people that just kind of know, like a Brookfield downtown, a CBRE, they've got a construction manager who's got a network of things, and they kind of understand when a project is happening, what's going on. So you're recognizing that there's a gap between those developers and floor zone. If I wanted to buy a building and move in, I don't, I, even though I know construction, like I'm getting to learn so much through this podcast. You're, you're, you're focused in on those clients that don't have that repetitive education
Right.
that's taught them so that they can have a confidant.
Right. And for example, if, floor zone was opening another building and all that, I would act as your owner advocate. And
Okay.
so I'm dealing with the architects and the engineers and helping figure out how to design it, set up the invitations to bid, qualifying the bidders that are doing the work, evaluate the bids, just basically acting as your expert in the construction to help you decide what you need, how to get it done, who to use, and that's just on the design phase,
Right.
you know.
And so how do you square up clients that, everybody like has a home, they do a little renovation project, they think they might know, and they try and get in. How do you square up the difference between, hey, you might have some little experience here and there on a house you might have built or something. That's not the same thing on commercial because we're
No,
we're a
yeah,
tenant.
the fundamentals are the same, I mean, you need a budget, you need estimates, documentation on it. It's just for a commercial build out space, there's more people involved, there's more trades, there's more zeros in the overall numbers that you're doing. Um, and the documentation needs to be a lot more rigorous. Um, you've got permitting issues that you didn't necessarily have with a residential
Okay.
building and all that. And it's just a different form. You need scheduling matters more, typically.
Yeah.
So that's
When do people engage in the process for a construction consultant? So and I'll throw 4 or 5 phases out. I got 2 years before my lease expires, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do. And then you go, okay, I definitely am going to move, but I haven't picked a space yet. And then, okay, I've picked a space, but I'm 6 months out before I'm going to move in. I'm not sure if there's any construction needed. Then I guess, so I don't know, like, or they get into, I do need construction. I've already hired an architect, or I've already hired or should they be looking to you first, even to look for the architect, or should they, what's the sweet spot of a client knowing or a tenant knowing, hey, let me get a construction consultant now?
I would say if you don't know any architects, you haven't had any experience at all with construction, talk to a consultant early on and talk to them. They can tell you kind of understanding where you're at. They can say, okay, here's a couple of architects to call. And do you need them? Do you have the time to spend putting that package together? Or you're very busy, they can help put all that together for you. It's you can have the conversation and come up with when the best time to come in.
I think what I just heard, and I think that like I was like, oh my gosh, like the day-to-day routine we get used to, we're doing good, it's helping make us money. But then when you have a new process and you have a new, like, this is a new process, we're moving the office, this is something we did, or just the initial thoughts to properly plan and prepare for that is a hurdle. And you're like, oh, I can do that tonight when I, finish the day's work. I'll do that to next week. And it's easy to put off, but I can see how, like, utilizing someone even in the concept phase of I might be moving so that they can plan would be beneficial. Do you get into helping with lots of times leasing brokers are going to say, hey, let's find 3 spaces that you think would be good. Are you potentially involved in guiding them on this space? features and benefits or anything like that? Or
Yeah, there's two parts to that. If you're looking in different areas, then yeah, I mean, I can help you with, you may have a brand new building that's going to take a complete build out in a different location that's an existing facility that you just want to remodel, or there's another one that's ready to move in exactly the way you need it. You just need
oh
to change
wow,
the side. And so, but the lease agreements may be different for each one of those. And so you've got this one that's got the best, the lowest maybe lease rate, but you've got a complete build out you have to do. So you got to factor that in. Whereas this one over here, that may be a more expensive um, lease, over the next 5 years is ready to move in. And just which one is overall best for you? And location's going to matter. That's more of that's on you as
yeah,
far as where you want to be. But also, it depends you know, if you are the only one making these decisions, then, uh, I'm just, you may have these conversations directly with the architect or your agent and all that stuff and not really need me at that point, except to give just general advice on the construction cost and everything. But if you're like I've got a project that's school project and I've done church projects where you're dealing with a committee. There's a lot of people that have input into that. And then you need to have meetings and prepare the meetings and have a list of questions and help direct everybody and sort of
yeah.
guide everyone through the process because you've got a lot of different levels of expertise and knowledge. They know their parts of it, but if you're going to have a committee involved, then you need someone kind of wrangling the whole thing.
Okay. All right, James. So we're gonna summarize real quick. If we can answer one question, and then I have another one about architecture after that. But what if we were going to summarize for everybody? What does a construction consultant do? What's the main thing before we go to the next part?
They are the owner's advocate and the owner's expert for the time that they need them for a construction project.
Okay. All right. So they're the expert that the owner knows. They can trust that knows there's not some type of construction contract billing situation where you might, think things different. You're going to be able to call out the trades as they're building this for you or for the tenant and know what's right or wrong to make sure they're getting the best bang for their buck. Is that
right? If they don't build projects on a regular basis, if they do, they're constantly building stuff. They probably have people on staff that know the construction industry.
okay?
Or they handle it themselves and are well versed.
Okay.
But if you haven't done much in the way, you don't know what you don't know. And so what you're doing is you're bringing me on board to help you flatten out the learning curve on a construction project.
So the podcast title will be like first time tenant build out, you need a construction consultant.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so that's a good way to say it. And we had talked earlier in a previous conversation about architecture. You were explaining to me is going to listen to the tenant's needs, understand how many offices or how many access to restrooms or those different code related type stuff, and make sure that the vision, there's some aesthetics the architects will do, but you're more focused as a construction consultant on you said something about how it's built or
Right. I mean, the architect is, making sure that the design meets the codes and meets all the qualifications from a design aspect that the client, are looking for. My background being in the actual construction as a general contractor, I'm looking at those plans from a constructability standpoint. So early on, I'm looking at the architectural plans, and when you and the architect are talking about different things, I can input some design. One design may cost more or less than the other. Or a feature. Can you use the existing facility or anything like that? But also, just making sure that the plans are detailed enough to be able to get accurate pricing from the contractors.
Okay. Well, that's something because we've got a lot of architecture friends and stuff, but we redline plans in a scope for flooring often because we would like to have more detail. And to fairness to architects, they need to be generalists who know a little bit about everything, and then they get into the trades, it gets a bit deeper. But so you're kind of that you're kind of a coach above that to try and help people
Yeah,
are covering all that so that it can't be built correctly.
well, and to be fair to the architects and designers and engineers and all that, when you're building a school, the plans are very detailed. There's hundreds and hundreds of pages. The spec books back when they printed them would take up several. Three-inch ring binders, which nobody uses anymore.
Yeah.
But if you're doing a lease space build out, you don't need all that detail, and you don't want to pay for all that detail.
Yeah.
And in a public school, the design phase isn't necessarily a major budget item where it may be in a lease space.
That makes sense.
I'm trying to help. The plans don't have to be detailed like a school, but they a lot of times need more detail than just the floor plan that the owner is happy with, just showing them where everything is.
Right.
And I can help bridge that gap early on.
So if we were going to give a warning sign, what makes or breaks a commercial project? I know that was a concept we had discussed earlier, but what would make or break a commercial project here?
The details, all the fixtures, all the finishes that you're going to do. You're going to have to decide that eventually. It won't cost less if you do it after you selected your contractor and after you started work.
Okay.
Get it early, and have a completion date as part of the contract. It's going to change. It's liable to change. Different things can affect that. But if you don't have a completion date set, you can't complete it. It'll drag on. And also, you want whatever contractor you go with, you need to make sure that the documentation is transparent. You can understand what's going on. You're making sure the trades are all being paid with the money that you're giving the contractor, and just there's documentation stuff that you wouldn't necessarily deal with on a residence, but you've got to do it with a commercial.
There's two or three memories come up on different projects. There's a guy who I worked with on some large construction projects that were ground up builds, but he used to, and I'll give his first name out, Fred. He was, a strong individual, liked things his way, and did great work. But he had a great expression. It was like any decision that the tenant or the business owner wants to make in the field, they need to realize that decision, if it's going to affect today's work, actually happened 30 days ago. And that decision, by not being made 30 days prior, meant that things move forward and they're going to have to unwind a bunch. And so I always tell people, like any decision that is made well ahead of time is a great decision, but you got to stick with it, and you can't change last minute, make a different decision once you start to see that final product. You can, but there's a cost to it.
Yes, you're right. It's going to cost you time. It's going to cost you money.
Yeah.
The change, even if it's a deduct where you're not doing something, that can still cost you money if it's made at an inopportune time.
I'm trying to make sense of this. I don't know if it's actually clicked in a joking way, but I try and tell people the longest thing in the construction process is a quick decision. Just make it. And then sometimes they draw it out for clients because there's a lot of debate and deliberation on doing that. We had a national expanding retailer, and at times the finish selections that we were supplying all over the country for, there might be a desired change from a supplier. And I'm like, you don't understand. 10 other people that made that decision over 20 different meetings. We don't just simply change something. And I guess we're talking around decisions. And let me get us back to the tenant should know or needs to know that the more they can be decisive and make decisions, it makes it easier, and you'll be guiding them towards that.
Right. And we're just talking about the tenant getting what they want. But also during the course of the project, depending on what you're doing, in order to get the permits finalized and cleared, there's steps that have to be taken, documentation that has to be done, testing that has to be done, that not only the city, the permitting side of it is going to require, but also the landlord.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get to the end and it's all built the way you want it, and these documents don't exist, you can be tearing up stuff that
and undoing.
Built. I mean, you go back and.
Well, so I was going to ask that too, like because we had on a previous podcast, Jill Schrader, she's Texas Permit Consultants, permit expediting and so forth. Do you work with, or do you actually kind of overlap and you do some permit expediting, or you have you as a construction consultant, you're saying, okay, this is the expediting service that you'll use. This is the contracting, or do you permitting? Because permitting, the reason why I brought this up is you had said keeping things on schedule, on track, and permitting is like a black hole of wait and then wait longer, and then
for the most part, the architects that you're doing will either they do the permitting themselves, or they work with a permit expediter.
Oh, okay.
In doing that.
Okay.
And so the architect's putting all that together, and that works best because the architect is also working with the MEP engineers, structural engineers, civil engineers, and all those documents have to be put together for the permitting package. And when one is changed, a lot of times it's got to change on those plans. So that's all put together, and the architect, much like the general contractor, is overseeing the entire construction phase of it. The architect is the central hub of the design.
So you can see, as a subcontractor who's not worked up the chain, right? Some of my questions I feel like are like, no, but what do you do? So you're the construction. Again, I need to remember that. Well, and you are sitting beside the business owner, beside the business manager who's helping run this project, and you're guiding them into these different groups. And I need to keep reminding myself to understand.
You made a very good point. As a subcontractor,
mm-hmm.
you are thinking about your phase of it.
Correct.
Okay, so you're thinking about the flooring, and you may be paying attention to the subfloor, whether or not you're floating or what they're going to get and transitions and all this. The plumber couldn't care less about any of that. He's dealing with the plumbing plans. Electrician is dealing with the electrical plans. And the general contractor, and more importantly, the consultant, is basically looking at all of it. And that's where I'm overseeing the general contractor and helping them deal with making sure it's all it all comes together.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where a lot of issues arise.
Setting drain heights between plumbers and floor people is always like, and I'm like, how do we get into a new project? And this happened again and again. And it seems like we do a lot of commercial construction, a lot of tenant improvement. We do a lot of restaurants that are, say, moving into office buildings, and that's always an issue. So I can see that. Well,
and because you've dealt with it more than once, you look for those things.
Yes.
Think about it. Every project you do, you'll probably learn something new to remember to look for on the next projects.
Yeah.
And that list gets longer and longer.
Yeah.
And so 35 years of being a GC, dealing with the flooring issues and the plumbing issues and electrical issues. Yeah, that stuff, that's what I'm on board for. So is to say, oh yeah, this is going to be a problem later on.
So this is a podcast, and so I think I can say a few colorful words. I'm not going to go too heavy, but we have an OSDF list. Oh shit, don't forget.
Yeah.
Right? And these are like the planning and preps for things that can cost our clients money. Well, so in terms of key advice, business owners planning a construction project, I give me a little bit of that.
Get at least 3 bids.
Okay.
Okay. Because if you get 2 bids and they're way far apart, you don't know which one's right.
Mm-hmm.
If you get 3 and they're all close together, you may not like the number, but that's probably about what it's going to cost.
Okay.
And confirm that the contractor that you're looking at having doing the work has some experience doing that. They may be great at pre-engineered metal buildings, but if they've never done a tilt wall before and you're doing tilt wall, they may not be the right one.
You mentioned that earlier, and what's interesting is they're all different sized general contracting companies. That's our main client base, and lots of times I'll see some of the big boys in town saying, "Oh, we're really just trying to build out our interiors division." But here in Houston, Texas, the interior tenant improve out is in tenant improvement build out niche is pretty cutthroat competitive, and some of those big guys I think sometimes struggle because of the overhead they carry to get down and dirty into the smaller projects. But anyway, so um I just kind of wanted to mention that in terms of the building type. And so I've seen some where they'll struggle in, well, they're used to they've built a 100,000 square foot facility, but now you're talking about a 15,000 square foot office space, and there's different parameters. So just because they know construction, the niche is important. So
yeah,
okay.
and also part of it is the funding. If you are going to be writing the checks for this work, and you're able to write a check every week or whenever the contractor gives you an invoice, okay. If the landlord's going to be paying for it and he's going to have a 30, 60-day holdover from when they get paid, then you need to make sure that the contractor can handle a delay between when they're billing and when they're getting paid. And that's more of a size of the project.
Yeah, but size of the project, but very important for the listeners out there. Business owner, business manager working on a tenant improvement project. James, earlier, I thought 3 great points was like the type of lease, and you're like a brand new space, the space that's going to get converted, or space that's ready to move in. Those are 3 different ones. Well, there's also different finance mechanisms, and so as a sub, we appreciate when we get paid quickly, but if you're a tenant, you might have to complete the work and can't get funded by the building for the tenant improvement until you've completed and showed receipts and they've been able to inspect. Others, they might want you to just pay straight out of your own pocket, and there's not a reimbursement. And so, the payment method and understanding that, I think I see you had talked about a mistake that tenants will often, how did you say it? They mistake the allowance for the build or whatever.
The landlord may be giving you an allowance for your build out, and a lot of times, first time tenants especially assume that allowance is going to pay for everything they want to do, and it rarely does. One other finance part of the deal is if the owner is financing through a bank, the bank in their loan agreement may have conditions that need to be met in order for the funds to be released. And that can be a stickler if everybody doesn't understand that ahead of time.
Yeah.
Both the contractor and the tenant.
Okay. All right, James. So some of those items, get multiple bids, make sure the contractors actually works on tenant improvement or that type of construction. And we talked about financing stuff. So let's talk about during the construction phase, like what are some things on how you would be helping and be a part of the process to make sure it runs smoothly?
I'd say one of the a key component of any construction project is you meet regularly on it with the contractor. I typically meet once a week for a project through the duration of the project at least. And basically you're focusing that meeting on what are outstanding issues that need to be resolved and where you are in the schedule, and are they on schedule?
Mm-hmm.
And everyone needs to understand that rarely do jobs just, get to the last week or two and all of a sudden fall off the schedule. You don't lose, a month at a time. You lose a day, 2 days, a week, depending. And so you really want to stay on top of it on a weekly basis so you can see it sliding and early on help decide what can be done to get back caught up, or if it can't be caught up, everyone's aware of it ahead of time.
Yeah, I on the planning part, one expression in construction is everything takes a third more time, a third more money, and a third more resources and patience. But then in terms of, again, I didn't introduce in this podcast, but I've told people that I own a commercial floor covering dealer here in Houston, Texas. And lots of times we'll get into like a high-rise condominium project that's got multiple bathrooms and stuff like that. And they're talking about, oh, you might do hundreds of units. And, can you manpower for hundreds of units? Well, the reality is can the plumbing team also manpower for 100? And can the electricians also? And most of those projects tend to get phases, but you're right, in losing a job schedule a day at a time happens because the plumbing fixture didn't arrive, or the drain or the component or the electrician or the flooring or something, and it just delays one thing.
Right. And the flooring is a finish, which is near the end of the project. And that's when it kicks back. But and you're talking about from a construction side.
Yeah.
From a tenant side, if you are, if you've got your flooring shop and you're leasing the space now and you're moving out to a larger space that you're having built out, a lot of times you have to give 60 days notice, if you're going to leave your lease at the beginning, or at a minimum, you're month to month and you're, 30 days kind of thing. But if you've got to give your existing landlord a 30-day notice of when you're moving out, then, or 60-day, then you need to know 60 days before the project's over, are they going to finish on time?
Yeah.
And and when the contractor says yes, don't worry, be happy. You have a lot riding on it, and you need to have a better feeling of
understand
that they're going to do that.
So you being involved at that point can go, hey, I get that it looks like it's 80% done, but the last 20% sometimes takes a lot more time than just 20%. And you're able to call that out ahead of time. I was going to tease you and say, this is where you're supposed to say, forgive the flooring guy and don't put all the pressure on him at the end of the job. But then you made a great point in the sense that if you're a tenant and you're moving out of an old space into the new, the landlord in the old space is wanting to have some consistency and expectations out of you, which applies pressure. I always say, hey, you need to give yourself a month or two overlap in between spaces. I don't know how realistic that is because everybody's situation is different, but I do do that. And so, all right. So, in terms of anything in the construction phase about subcontractor payments, lien notices that we wanted to cover.
Yeah, it's get your design in at the beginning, up front. Make as few changes as you can. That's just going to save you time and money. And even if the money's not an issue, time and you don't. What can appear to be a small change can end up affecting a lot of other factors that can cost you more than you think. So you need to have time to fully evaluate the changes that you are doing, and so just avoid them if all possible. And they don't necessarily, especially at the end of a project, it's having it done then is not necessarily cheaper than letting the contractor finish their work, be done, clear your permits, get you moved in, or get you where you can move in, and then make those changes. They might end up being even less of an issue.
Okay. So I'm going to hit you with a memorable project question, but I want one more before that, and that is a sweet spot client for you or for a construction consultant, because I know you had talked earlier about, hey, not the developer and the property management firm that has construction going all the time and they have resources inside, but I use this expression a lot. A cell phone repair shop in a lower economic part of town, or the 65th floor in a Class A office building. There's a lot of different variety of tenants in between and stuff. Is there a sweet spot type of client aside from just they don't have construction experience? Is it a size? Is it a industry niche, a restaurant, something to that effect? That
Not really. The A number of my clients just they understand the construction, they just don't have the time to put into it. So regardless of the size project you're doing, that can be a big factor. And if you're just doing a break room remodel, I'm probably a waste.
Yeah.
But anything other than that, like I said, helping it get done on time, dealing with the landlord, dealing with permitting issues that come up, that can just eat up a lot more time than most people realize.
Yeah.
So that would, and I've also been in situations where a tenant is looking at a space. They've talked about the design. They've got the architect. They've talked to the landlord, and the numbers all look good. But when we actually get it down into them and get more detail and more understanding, I've had the client realize that that's not a good deal after all, and the construction phase of it goes away. They don't do the lease, and that's. That may be part of my job too, is to give the advice to the owner that maybe he ought to go, not do this one right now.
I like playing poker. Anybody who sees this podcast that knows me will laugh that I said that, but I do tell some. I'm not a great poker player. I think I'm okay, but I have some friends that join the group and start to learn, and I'm like, you're going to do much better at the hands you fold. Like you need to actually be encouraged by the things you say no to. And I know that there's several business expressions in and around that, but you'll make more money saying no than you will saying yes.
Yeah.
All right. So tell me about the memorable project, and then let's kind of close our final thoughts on how we're going to do that. You talked about a crazy elevator shaft story.
Yeah. For anybody driving down the road and sees a big CMU block tower in the middle of a construction site, that is typically the stairwells and or the elevator shafts that have tolerances that need to be met, and they're fire rated, so they're CMU block walls and stuff.
So that's a giant development construction site, and you just see this random brick tower
right
in the middle of it. Nothing's built around. That's the elevator.
Even in a multifamily structure.
Okay, that's what I was thinking of developing near the house right now.
And because of the tolerances, it's just easier to build those things first.
Yes, of course.
Build the structure around it. And we had a 6-story building that we need to put an existing building, an old building. We had to put a gurney elevator. And because the surgical
building.
Yeah. And the surgical center was going to be on the top floor, and we had to raise the ceiling of half of the top floor of a 6-story building, and then put an elevator shaft with all its criteria in the existing building without taking the old building down. And that was a trick.
Okay, and you nailed it, I hope.
Yeah, it's still there.
It's still there.
I got to ride up the elevator on the ceiling with the inspector.
Oh, did you really? Okay, a little 007 Mission Impossible.
That's exactly what we were making jokes about.
That is awesome. All right, and so summarizing, James Healy, construction consultant here in Houston, Texas. Is it just Houston, or do you venture outside of Houston? Or
yeah, I've got a couple projects in Dallas.
Do you? Okay. All right. And then in terms of the types of projects, so again, if you're a business owner, business manager, and you're leasing a new space, a property management team that maybe you're a property management team of an owner who only owns one building, and the construction resources aren't there, and the processes and so forth, James and a construction consultant would be the right person. If you're maybe some type of a service firm where man hours or billable man hours is the main focus, it's taken away a lot for the business owners to manage the construction project,
Right.
and utilizing your services would be great.
And avoiding problems is usually going to cost you less than trying to fix the ones you run into.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. There's uh, an expression in Spanish. I said this on another podcast. El que paga barato paga mucho. The guy who pays a little pays a lot. So planning ahead is going to avoid those expenses and stuff.
fine.
James, you've been a great guest. I really
Thank you very much.
appreciate you being
it.
here. Yeah.
Appreciate being here.
So tenantimprovement.com. This is the Lease and Build podcast. There's a link to hit subscribe. Please do that. Please share this with your friends. You can go to tenantimprovement.com. In the expert directory list, there's a construction consulting category. James's profile is there. And we really appreciate you guys listening. Look for future episodes. So thank you.